Yes. Welcome to my talk. My name is Noman Riffat, and I'm a senior security consultant at MBSec. The topic of my talk today is finding 0 days in WordPress plugins and themes. Considering WordPress compromises around 43% of worldwide applications, and considering there are over 1 billion websites worldwide, this is a very huge number. And if you're a penetration tester or a bug bounty hunter, coming across a WordPress application is pretty common. So in this talk, I'm going to discuss how you can find, how you can do the code reviews on WordPress plugins and themes, and what you can do more than just running a WPScan. This is a very good advice for the new security researchers. They keep asking questions like where to actually start from. So this is very good advice, just start looking at WordPress plugins. Start looking at their code. They are damn vulnerable. There are around 90,000 WordPress plugins floating around. So if you start looking at their code, for sure you will find a hell lot of vulnerabilities. Disclaimer, everything which I'm going to discuss in this talk, these are not uniquely my own techniques. They are already known in the public. But I have, in the WordPress security domain, a lot of people know about this. But I've barely seen in bug bounties and penetration testing, a lot of consultants, they do not follow these techniques, which I'm going to discuss in this talk later on. So what makes me excited about WordPress, first of all, is WordPress, because I have been a WordPress developer for a very long time. And secondly, if I came across a WordPress application which has 20 plus plugins installed, so most of the times a typical WordPress application, it does contain a lot of plugins installed, and the more plugins means there is more code and there are more chances of it being vulnerable. The third thing is it is using premium plugins. So WordPress officially, they have their own repository for WordPress plugins and themes as well. If you're a developer, you develop the new plugin and you want to submit to them. So WordPress repository, their security team, they will first review your plugin. It will try to look for the very obvious vulnerabilities which are found most of the times. And then if they found anything vulnerable in your plugin, they will ask you to patch it, and then they will publish it on their repository. The fourth thing is if user registration is enabled on WordPress. By default, most of you know that the user registration is disabled on WordPress. But if somehow you are able to register a user, it actually expands the attack surface to a very big extent, which I will demonstrate later how. So what we do in everyday WordPress pen test, we just run a WP scan, try to brute force credentials, do open source intelligence, try to find the developer credentials from any breach databases and use them. But is that it? Is there any more to it? And I will discuss it now. So doing the code reviews for WordPress plugins and themes. So WordPress, because it is based on PHP, it can contain all the vulnerabilities which are found in PHP application. So I'm not going to discuss those, obviously. But I will look at the specific WordPress functions and hooks to look at. You should make a checklist of all these functions and hooks. So every time you're trying to do a code review, just look for these strings in your WordPress and try to look for the functions attached to these hooks or the functions themselves, and try to review the code inside them. Before I start, so I'm going to start all of these hooks one by one. So before I start, let me tell you one thing. As you maybe some of you know, that in the WordPress admin directory, there are 2 PHP files which are always accessible as an unauthenticated user by default. And one of them which you may aware of it is admin ajax.php, and the other one is admin post.php. So these 2 files, they are also responsible for the 99% of WordPress exploits which are published every day. And not WordPress, I mean the WordPress themes and plugin exploits which are published every day. And I have no idea why WordPress has done absolutely nothing to address these issues, because all of the plugins, themes, and the plugins and theme exploits, they revolve around these 2 files. in my opinion, like I think if there is any file in the admin directory, it should be restricted. It should be restricted to only logged in user, let's say administrator, or any other privileged user. So first function is admin. Let's say you're a developer and you're very new to WordPress. If you came across this function, what will come in your mind that this function is actually checking for is admin, but no, that's not the case. This function only checks if the current page is admin or not. And as I said before, these two files, they are accessible without any as an unauthenticated user. If you access these two pages, that means you have already bypassed this check. For example, even if my grandma, she opens this URL, that means she has bypassed is admin check. And I will just show you a very small example. There was a exploit in social warfare plugin a few years ago, and that's how the vulnerability. This is how the vulnerability occurs. So in the first line of code, the developer is checking if is admin. So developer probably assumed that if the current user is admin or not, and then just kill the code. In the next line, it's taking a user provided input URL, fetches it, and I will just snip the rest of the code and come to and if you look, it sends all those the URL provided input, fetches the data from the URL and send it straight into the evil function. So it was totally unauthenticated remote code execution vulnerability in this plugin called Social Warfare plugin. And the payload was so simple. It's just one line URL. You see the payload equals this. Admin post.php, you already bypassed is admin check. And then you come to WP URL, and here you have provided the attacker host. And payload.txt contains just this code, which is calling a PHP system function to execute commands. Admin init. So what is a hook in WordPress? So hook is basically by name means like you want to call your custom function every time a specific WordPress functionality is performed. Let's say in WordPress you log in, you try to save posts, you try to activate a plugin, you install a plugin. All these, like you want to call your custom function. Let's say you made a custom function. So you want, the purpose of that function is every time someone activates a plugin, you want to send admin an email, for example. So you can add a hook like add action, plugin activate, call your custom function, and then send an email there. So this is the purpose of the hook. So admin init hook is initialized every time a page in admin directory is accessed. And as I say, because these two pages are accessible without any authentication, you can also bypass this check as well. This is a very dummy vulnerable code I have shared here. So the red part is the custom part, and the rest of it is the syntax. So this is how you declare this admin init hook, and you can see add action, admin init, my custom critical function. So what's going on in custom critical function? It takes all of the user inputs and codes, serialize them, and assign them to options parameter, and then later update options. Update option is also a WordPress core function. So you and in this case here, my function, my option name is my theme option. So in the modern WordPress themes, or most of the WordPress themes, like the themes today they're so much customizable that if you want to change anything, you want to change your footer, header, sidebar, anything, you do not need to go into the code. You just log into your WordPress dashboard. There are theme settings, and you just store all of your. You want to set your footer tags, logo, set everything. If you want. So this is a very dummy kind of code. So how to actually exploit this this function, this dummy function? This is how you exploit it. You just send a post request to admin post, because admin post is accessible without any authentication. And setting number one, let's call setting number one is the setting of your header, for example, and setting number two is responsible for your footer text, right? So I'm gonna send this post request, and your header will be changed with this text called test, and your footer text, which mostly like copyright 2022 or something like this, it will be replaced by this. So theoretically, you will have a persistent stored accesses onto the home page of WordPress. And I will later show you a POC on an actual website how I actually exploited there. Spotify, secretgenius.com. So this website is owned by Spotify, and it's not right now, but it used to be part of their bug bounty program. So I came across this website. This was based on WordPress. So I started doing the code review for this one. And when I was doing the code review, I found they were using a premium plugin called Booked. And this is the URL of the premium plugin where you can actually buy this plugin. So this plugin is worth around $20 or $30. So I was like, I have to either buy it or just download it from any pirate site to do the review. So what I did was, because I was also a WordPress developer in the past, so I remember I worked on this plugin for a client, so I had the code, so I don't have to worry about it. And to buy or download from any pirated website. So I had the source code, and let me show you the source code here. So this was I will not go to the very the whole source code. I just copied the specific vulnerable function just to for a POC here. So it was initializing admin init hook. See, add action admin init. Every time a admin page is accessed, call this function admin init, and admin init is also a custom function which is defined here. So I will not go into very detail. But so this website, Secret Genius, was a website for artists. Like they make an booking or kind of appointment with Spotify. They come, they submit their first name, last name, their address, phone number, and other PII just to make an appointment. So all of that details was stored in the backend database of this WordPress. So this functionality was supposed to be for only administrator. The administrator was supposed to log into the dashboard and download all of the records of all the appointments which all the artists have submitted there. So when I came into this function, admin init, I knew as soon as I access admin ajax.php or admin post.php, I'm already inside this function. And when I review this function, it's only checking if it's set post parameter. If post parameter this is set, then include this file. I will not go to detail of this file, but if you look at this function right now, it does not contain any kind of authorization check. It's not checking if the current user is logged in or not. It's not even checking if the current user is administrator or not. Nothing at all. And in this very first line, it's just checking if post parameter this is set, then include this file. I will not go into detail of this file, but this file was responsible to take all the records from all the appointment records from database and convert them into CSV and just throw the output. It was so simple. So how I actually exploited it, I just sent a post request to admin post.php. Why? Because this file is again accessible without any authentication. And I just set this post parameter, which is in the code above. Just set this. That's it. It was so simple. This was the exploit. And in the response, it threw me the whole CSV file. You can see the CSV file name right here. And I will not obviously share all the data. I will just show the header of the output file which I received. It contained first name, last name, email, phone number, and custom field data. Further contained address and stuff like this. And by just simple this request, I was able to dump like thousands of artist records on Spotify, Secret Genius. While I was still reviewing this, I found a lot of more issues as well. And when Spotify realized the underlying code was so bad because they purchased a plugin from somebody, like it was so poorly written code. So they totally shut down their website. secretgenius.com is not available anymore. If you open this website, it redirects to spotify.com. Okay. So another thing is user registration widens WordPress attack surface. This is what I mentioned initially in the start of this talk. So every time you're doing bug bounty or you're working for a client, your aim is to make sure somehow you need to add a user into the WordPress. And by default, as I say, registration is disabled, but if you access this URL, it will tell you that this user registration is enabled or not, or review the website manually. Maybe there is some custom sign-up page somewhere in the WordPress, right, which allows you to register, especially if this is an e-commerce website, because obviously if it is an e-commerce website, the shop owners or the administrator, they encourage you to sign up to their website. They want you to, they want your data, so they encourage you to sign up, and because they can use your email and phone number later to spam you. So make sure, if it's e-commerce, it's very easy to sign up. The thing is, let's say there are like 20 plugins installed in WordPress. You started reviewing all the plugins one by one. You came across plugin number 1, and you saw there is a privilege escalation vulnerability there, and you're like, I need to have at least a low privilege user to do the privilege escalation. And you started reviewing all of the plugins, plugin 2, plugin 3, and remember that all these plugins, they're independent of each other, right? And you came across plugin number 5, and plugin number 5 allows user to do the registration. So now you can chain 2 plugins, plugin number 5 and plugin number 1, to actually exploit your WordPress, which is your target. So plugin number 5 will allow you to do the registration, and using that user, now you can exploit the vulnerability you found in plugin number 1. Or you can use Google Docs like this, search for sign up and register page. The second hook is WP Ajax no privilege action. So this hook is used to trigger specific functions or specific custom function on Ajax calls. So this is how the syntax is. The red part is the custom part, which you need to specify. The first one here, this MDSec, is the name of the action. So when action equals MDSec, then call this function MDSec _ function, and then you can review this function, what's going on there. So how to actually reach this function theoretically, this is how you reach it. Just send a post request, or you can even send a get request as well to admin Ajax, because this is a Ajax hook. And action equals MDSec, and this is what I said, action equals MDSec, and then you will be inside this function. The thing with this hook is, it clearly says WP _ Ajax no privilege. No privilege means like this is supposed to be for unauthenticated user, or this is only for the front-end user. So when developers are using this hook, most of the time they know that this hook is only supposed to be for front-end users, so they do not put anything critical inside this function. But this function should be in your checklist, and you should review. I have found a lot of issues within this function as well. The next one is WP Ajax. This is exactly same as WP no privilege, but this one is without no privilege. And you can see here there was no privilege, and this time here it is without no privilege. The syntax is exactly same, and how to reach it now, it's exactly the same syntax, action equal MDSec, but this time you need cookies, the session cookies of any privileged user. That user can be even an administrator, or can be even least privileged user. The problem with this hook is that developers know that if they want Ajax for the front-end user, then they are using no privilege. But this one here, they know that this is only for authenticated user, and they also assume that administrator is the only authenticated user, right? So they write a lot of critical stuff in this function. And this is why I told you that if you are somehow able to register a user in WordPress core, it will expand your attack surface. And once you have a user, and that any of the plugins or themes is using this hook, then for sure you will find a lot of critical stuff inside this function as well. And this is how you reach it. You just need in this case, we do not need any kind of session cookies, but here we need a session of at least any privileged user. So to sum this up, if you are unauthenticated, if you are not able to register any user on the WordPress, then only these hooks in the green ones are available for you to review. if you were able to register a user somehow onto the WordPress, and then all of these hooks are available, and this is how you actually expanded your attack surface to do the code review. Test case for coldfusion.adobe.com. So I came across this site during a bug bounty. Cold Fusion is a community website for Adobe product Cold Fusion. When I came across this site, I knew it is developed on WordPress. And I see they have an option to join community or sign in as well. Like you can register or sign in if you have an account. So when you click join community or you click sign in, it actually redirects you to the Adobe main authentication page. Like, for example, when you try to log into a third-party vendor through Google or through Facebook, it's pretty normal. So this is also normal. The thing here was, when you sign up here or when you log in here, it will redirect you back to Cold Fusion, fair enough. But the problem is it does not also redirect you here, but it also registers your user into the WordPress core of this website, coldfusion.com. And how I actually knew it, because after I signed it, I was inspecting my traffic. I see there is a session cookie going on to the server, and that cookie was the WordPress session. I did not even know what my username is on the WordPress, but all I had was I had a user on WordPress. I have the session cookies of the WordPress user. So this is how the flow was. Log into this URL. It will redirect you here. So I was doing the code review for Adobe, and I found they were using this theme called Centric. This one. And when I Googled more about this theme, I found that this is actually a premium theme sold on ThemeForest. So, and when I checked it, this theme was worth $50. So I'm like, I have to buy this to do the code review, or you can just do this to download it. Obviously, don't do it. Be very, very careful when you're downloading like this, because for sure they will contain backdoors. So make sure you do not run that theme or those plugins on any critical infrastructure or any critical system. Make sure everything is isolated. And so, yeah, so I downloaded it, and let me show you a POC. The thing is, wait, let me show you the exploit first, the vulnerable code. So I was doing the code review. Now I knew that I have somehow registered a user into the WordPress. So theoretically, I can not only access WP Ajax no privilege, but I can also review the WP Ajax hooks also, because I have at least a privileged user now. So I came across this function, and I've only copied the only vulnerable function for the POC purposes. So I came across this function, mtheme save option. What this basically means is, this function is, or this hook is responsible to save all your theme options. For example, on Adobe, they have set their logo, they have set their footer, they have set their sidebars, and all those settings are responsible by this hook, right? So and I was like, what if let's say I found a vulnerability? How am I going to show them a POC? Should I inject my XSS payload into the footer, which should reflect on their homepage, which makes no sense? And if I had showed that POC, I would have gotten in trouble. So I was like, I should make this POC on my localhost and send them the video. So this is the POC I made on my localhost. So what I did on my localhost was I installed this vulnerable theme, supposedly vulnerable theme, on my localhost, and I made a very least privileged user, call it demo. So this demo has only subscriber level of privilege. You can see on the left side, it does not have any kind of privilege, right? And the theme Centric is installed there. So, and you see in the footer, you can see the copyright 2022. So let's exploit it and change the 2022 to 2024 maybe. So I sent this POC, the request to my repeater. In this request, my main concern is only the cookies. I only need cookies, right? I only need the session cookie, right? And because I have the session cookie on Adobe, Cold Fusion or Adobe.com, so I was like, yeah, this should work on the main website as well. So here I sent this request to repeater. I changed it to post and then I changed the profile to admin post.php. Sorry, yeah, admin ajax.php, because the Ajax hook was vulnerable. And this is, I copied the footer text. You can see it's not, there is no any kind of critical, token or stuff like this. It's same for all the themes which are using. It's the same for all of them. So you see theme, responsive, and which setting we are trying to update, footer copyright, and we'll try to change copyright 2022 to 2024. So I sent this, came back to the home page, go to the bottom, you see the footer setting is changed here. Using only the least privileged user, I was able to change the footer. So this, the issue, the broken authentication issue, you can call it. It was not only the broken authentication issue, but it was also not sanitizing any kind of user input. So I was like, what if I inject my JavaScript payload? Let's call it script alert. Send this, come back to home page, refresh it, and I have stored accesses onto the home page. Imagine if I send this POC to Adobe. I mean, I would have gotten in trouble. So what I did was I just made the POC on localhost and took them a few months to understand what the issue was. But they did acknowledge later on and they patched it. So yeah, the next hook is admin post, and we previously have checked WP Ajax. I'm sorry. Yeah, the next one is admin post and admin post no privilege. So the syntax of this hook is exactly same as the Ajax one. Everything is same, exactly the same, except just replace Ajax with post, and you see the action is exactly same. And how to actually reach this function is, this is how. So instead of sending post request to admin Ajax, you send post request to admin post, and action equals this. But this function is very, very rarely used. I have reviewed a lot of plugins because the purpose of these both hooks are exactly the same. So developers mostly use admin Ajax. Nobody used it because, but then again, this hook should be in your checklist when you're doing the code review. If you came across, for example, in my experience, if I, let's say, came across 100 instances of WP Ajax, against those 100 instances, I may have only found only one instance of admin post. But yeah, once you find it, you should do the code review for that as well. And again, if I make an overview, if you're unauthenticated, only the green ones are available, and if you are somehow able to register a user, all these hooks are available here. So that's all for my talk. If you have any question regarding this, you can ask me.
The one where you got the export CSV values file to that.
Yeah.
Did you try, like, was there any way to poison the file?
Like, even if I poison, what's the point? I can pretend to be an artist. I can do a CC injection, for example, maybe. But my concern was not to find any client-side bug, like only server-side bug. Try to dump any user data. Yeah, this is what I tried. All right.